This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Chad Mays. He is a member of the California State Assembly, representing significant portions of the Inland Empire, a huge district. Huge.
It is.
How big?
It is. Well, I mean, I don't know how big by miles, but it takes about an hour and 45 minutes to get from one side of the district to the other. So I've got La Quinta on the easternmost portion. Yeah, that's a great community.
Right.
All the way down to Yucaipa, Hemet, San Jacinto, all the way out to Tornado Palms and Tornado Palms Marine Corps Base.
Very hot.
It's hot right now, no doubt.
Very dry.
Yes.
And so I want to get a sense from you, how are your constituents doing during this drought?
You know, I mean, it is a topic of conversation. Just this morning, I had a community meeting, Mornings with Mays.
I like it.
The first
I like
one
it. I want to go.
Yeah, we should. We'll invite you next time.
I appreciate it.
But it was in Hemet, and so I had some folks from the community that met with me, and that was a topic this morning about water. So I've got to tell you, for me, water. And we often talk about this. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
Just in my district, it is wildly different between Yucaipa, even through the pass area, Hemet, San Jacinto, out to
Yucaipa. I mean, it's practically L.A. I mean, in the best sense. I mean, it's a suburb of Los Angeles.
Yeah,
no,
I'm not sure they would want to say that they're part
of
LA.
But I guess it's got an urban feel.
Okay.
Whereas I got to think Hemet, not as much.
Well, okay, yeah, and Yucca Valley. We'll say
Yucca
Yucca
Valley,
Valley,
right.
not as much. I think
I'm agreeing with you, I guess.
No, sure,
I'm agreeing with you.
Sure.
The different views.
But with the drought, some of our communities have done really well in taking state water project water and storing it, putting it in the aquifer, putting it in the groundwater basins for storage for these rainy. When we don't have rainy years, when we have these years of drought, other communities haven't done as well. And so in every pocket of my district, it's different.
And let's talk about storage. So if we were speaking to each other 25, 30 years ago, your friends on the Democratic side of the aisle would have seen storage as a dirty word.
Yeah.
That would we would never be discussing storage.
Yeah.
Dams, damn the dams. And now things have changed. I think there is a sense amongst Democrats and Republicans that storage, especially surface storage, is part of the solution. Is that fair? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think that, I'd hope so. I mean, in the conversations that I've had with some of my Democratic colleagues in private, I've heard those sort of
but
rumblings.
But even in public, I mean, when the bond passed in November, I mean, storage was almost a third of the money that went to the water bond. I know some of it's groundwater, but still, surface storage is part of that solution.
That's right, and it was Republicans that really forced that and said, look, the only way we're going to deal with the water crisis is if we have more storage. And so it went from $2 billion. They tried to get it up closer to $3 billion for storage.
And it did.
Ended up with $2.7 billion to make that happen.
Here's the challenge, though.
Yeah.
So we're in a drought right now.
Yeah.
It takes time to build storage.
It does, absolutely.
A lot of time.
Yeah.
And we know that Californians are very protective of this beautiful state in which we live.
Of course, yeah.
And we have something called the California Environmental Quality Act.
Yeah.
You know that CEQA, as it's called, has been used in the past as a weapon in litigation.
Yeah.
And there have been instances where certain interests were able to get CEQA, I don't want to say exemptions, that's too broad, but they were able to get the legislature to pass specific targeted legislation to speed up any CEQA challenges in the courts.
No, absolutely, and I can tell you, if you were in Sacramento and you go down J Street right now, you get off the freeway onto J Street, you will see the new Sacramento Kings Arena, which looks like it's going to be a beautiful facility. And just a few years ago, it got a CEQA exemption from the legislature because they wanted to speed that progress up.
So they weren't excluded from the laws of CEQA. It's just any challenges had to be decided quickly. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay.
That's accurate. And just recently, in fact, there's the last trailer bill that the Golden State Warriors for their new project got an exemption from CEQA. And so
I understand that you and some of your colleagues are looking to allow certain water storage projects to obtain that same benefit. Not excluding the projects from CEQA, but speeding up the litigation process.
That's right. I had run a bill this year that would have said that any litigation had to be resolved within 270 days of when it was filed. And to me, if we're talking about, and that was in regards to housing, but there's also another one with water, that seems to be appropriate. That if we're in a water crisis, shouldn't we be doing whatever we can do right now to make sure that we're building that storage capacity?
So, I'm neutral. I don't take positions on bills,
Sure, yeah.
but intuitively, your argument makes some sense. I don't know, it makes a little bit of a sense.
Yeah.
What happened when you talked to your friends on the Democratic side?
Well, I think, I don't want to talk about the different pressures that they're under for not supporting it, or not my bill in regards to housing. When I put that bill before the Natural Resources Committee, and it ended up dying a quick death. There was 7 votes against and only 2 votes for.
But what about your colleague James Gallagher's bill?
Yeah.
That was focused on water storage.
It was. And the same thing happened. I don't know what the exact vote is, but when he made a very strong case for it, we've got to get these projects done. And even with that project, it couldn't be done.
Why? Do you have a sense?
I wish I knew. I mean, if I could put myself in the mind of other members,
sure.
I wish I could,
do
that, but
look,
I can't read.
You're
I
a
can't
young,
read minds.
affable guy. My guess is you're one of the Republicans that's friends with lots. Most of you are friends with lots of the Democrats. I mean, it seems like you're pretty collegial up there.
Yeah.
Is this something that if we don't see El Nino this winter, like we think we may, that this bill could come back to life?
If the pressures of the drought continues to get worse, then maybe. My hope is that it will begin to rain, and my hope is that we'll start getting some CEQA reform done, so that people can't use it, as you say, a tool.
And it's interesting because Governor Brown, a man of faith, has said it's the Lord's work for him to reform CEQA. I mean, he has said that.
Absolutely.
And so I wonder, if maybe you all should start triangulating. So, work with the governor. I mean, look, Republicans have plenty good relations with this Democratic governor.
That's right.
Is there a way for you and Kristen Olson, who's your leader, to get to the governor on this issue? Because if, CEQA reform is the Lord's work, that's his words, not mine. Why not try to triangulate on it?
Well, I understand where you're coming from.
Right.
I think, the truth is I think it's just good public policy to reform CEQA. If you look at all of our issues, whether it's water infrastructure, whether it's transportation infrastructure, whether it's housing, CEQA is a hurdle that folks have to.
President Obama triangulated on trade. Okay, Bill Clinton triangulated on, I think, was it welfare reform or whatever it is? Meaning you had a Democrat working with the Republicans in the legislature.
Yeah. No, look, no, absolutely. I think on all of these things, we want to make sure that we're working together. It's not about the political games. It's not about trying to win. It's about making sure there's good public policy. And today, we need more water infrastructure built. We need more transportation. We need more roads and bridges, some of our bridges fixed.
And we have a special session on that.
And we need more housing to be built as well. And CEQA is a hurdle to try to get those things done. And so I think we need to get that. It needs to be reformed.
So to broaden it out, if I may.
Yeah.
We've heard rumblings about CEQA reform.
Yeah.
Do you think, taking it away from water, taking it away from housing, that maybe when you go back for the fall session, or I know it's a short one, or next year, 2016, that CEQA reform could be put on the table and truly debated?
I really do hope that the legislative leaders, I know on the Republican side, we've been talking about CEQA reform. I would hope that the majority party and some of the members in the majority party will look at this and say, yes, we've got to do something about CEQA, because it's just creating too many hurdles in the way of getting some things done.
So you're a new member. How's it been?
It's been,
Talk to me.
No, you know what, it has been, it's been fun. People say, do you enjoy it? And I say, well, enjoy is probably a little strong.
Well, I bet you do.
But
you're that guy.
No, yeah, but it's fascinating. On one end, it's disappointing. On another, and I say disappointing in the sense of, just yesterday we had this.
Recently,
recently we had this debate about vaccines.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by the debate and the discussion. I wish every single day on the floor of the Assembly that we had those sorts of debates and discussion.
We'll make it happen.
And that kind of discourse. So we're working on that.
His name is Chad Mays. He is a member of the California State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerance, and you are watching Charter Local Edition. Welcome, it's Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Eric Negrete. He is a member of the Victorville City Council in the high desert of California. And sir, I have had the good fortune of covering the Inland Empire all the way back to around 2009. And I saw some of the most gloomy times for the high desert. I remember the LA Times ran an extended series on Hesperia, a city right next to Victorville, and how there were tracts where 1 out of 10 homes were occupied. Half-built homes. Talk to me about those times.
Absolutely. During those times, what you had was the market was just not cooperating.
Oh, yes.
So we had an increase in inventory, and we had a number of years where we had to work through that inventory. It's good to say that we're in a bit of a revival now, and that shadow inventory and the built-up inventory you're speaking of has somewhat disappeared, and we're starting to get back to the market fundamentals.
But let's talk about that, because literally I remember the news reports, the national news, they would talk about ground zero of the foreclosure crisis. And the high desert was always at the top of the list. And so to go from that 5-6 years ago to where you are today is pretty remarkable. I mean, not everything's perfect back in the high desert, but are you on the mend?
We are. I think you look at traditional boom-bust scenarios, whether it's in Palmdale or other parts that are further out from the core. We've experienced that as well, but unfortunately, jobs are the real key. Job growth. And so being a pro-business and advocate up in the high desert, we're doing everything we can to attract those jobs so that our commuters don't have to go down the hill. We have about 60 to 70,000 high desert commuters that are going to LA, and certainly if we provided them employment up in the high desert, it would be an easy trade-off.
And let's talk about employment opportunities. The high desert, for better or for worse, does have a number of penitentiaries at various levels of sophistication, I guess you could say. Federal penitentiaries, state penitentiaries, even private penitentiaries. Talk to us about the importance of those jobs to your region, aside from the politics of them, the importance of them.
Well, there's a diversity of employment that we've had to go through when you have an over-reliance on the Air Force Base that was there. However, the Air Force Base does continue to provide jobs. One of the facilities that is there is a federal prison. So the city of Victorville didn't have a choice of whether or not that jail was going to be there, but nonetheless, it's there. And the city of Adelanto has 3 prisons nearby. And while we've experienced the negative effects of sprawl, we've increased and doubled in population since 2000, we haven't had the jobs to come along with that. So when you do get a chance to bring jobs, however they do come, you have to look at that very carefully. But you know, that's something that at the city of Victorville, we are trying to shy away from jails in general. As a solution.
But let's talk about one of your sister cities, Adelanto, which is looking at constructing another prison. And if you look at a map, as I understand it, it's literally on the Victorville-Adelanto line. Next to the federal prison, is that right?
Right, it's very close.
So what's your sense of Adelanto's move to build another prison?
Well, I think when you're talking about the highest and best use of your land, whether it's in our city or their city, and then being neighbors, that complicates the issue. But what winds up happening is that that sprawl that I talked about and getting the double increase in population without jobs, now on top of that, the LA County Board of Supervisors considering sending us 3,000 more prisoners.
And that's part of the Adelanto plan. I mean, literally.
Correct.
I mean, they're building one now already, which I believe is private. The next one that they're looking at is specifically dedicated to LA County inmates.
And when you're talking about crime, traffic, and pollution, those are quality of life issues for everyone. We used to have a great quality of life up in the high desert. But unfortunately, we're mirroring a lot of the negative effects of sprawl that happen in the LA County area are coming up to the desert. And so the folks here in the high desert just really want to look at that and say, maybe we should have a conversation about that, because we're not sure that that is the best and highest use of the available land.
But what can Victorville do as it relates to Adelanto's decision?
Well, not much. We've sent a letter out to LA County, and we CC'd obviously the other cities in the high desert, and we've invited all of the stakeholders in the high desert to sit down and really talk about this.
But you know, look, aren't jobs at penitentiaries pretty good jobs? I mean, they're fairly well paying, they have decent benefits. I'm just wondering, look, it's easy to say not in my backyard. I don't want another prison, penitentiary in my backyard, but they're not bad jobs.
Well, they're not, but the requirements to get those jobs typically, whether or not they're union, whether or not it's time and grade, somebody else has preference for those jobs. What we'd like to see is actual good paying jobs, and the airport, I believe, is one of those areas to focus on.
Well, it's called the Southern
California Logistics Airport.
Right, which I understand is remarkable. I mean, a lot of planes that are produced in this nation are actually parts of them are produced there, is that right?
There's maintenance as well as storage of those facilities.
Right.
And what you have is approximately 2,000 jobs currently at the airport. What we're looking at build out is having more than 20,000 jobs there.
Right.
So we're really looking to promote the SCLA. It's a fantastic asset that most cities don't have. There's a lot of great companies there like ComAb, Mars, Snapple, and we have great jobs there. And so we really need to and reinvest in SCLA.
And you're going to have more great jobs because I guess a Holiday Inn has opened?
Right. It actually was there before. It started off as the Hilton.
I think I stayed there, actually. I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, but be that as it may, is it already open?
It was the Holiday Inn, and then it fell into disrepair, and it became the Ambassador, and now Holiday Inn has come back. And part of the revival I was speaking about is that you have these landmark locations throughout the high desert, and this particular site is right on the 15 freeway and Palmdale Road, and it's a very central location for the entire high desert. So to see the Holiday Inn come back and reinvest in that location is just fantastic.
I mean, in the end, penitentiaries, the airport, Holiday Inn, I would think that all of these developments create catalytic consequences, and as a result, you'll have businesses popping up. So while maybe penitentiaries aren't your preferred business, job creator, dry cleaners will come as a result, and restaurants will come as a result, and post offices, and...
Right, and I think if you look at our location, every community has basically healthcare, education, and government jobs as the staples.
Right.
Then because of our location, you have transportation, construction, and some of these other businesses. But even if you look at government, sales tax and property tax revenues are increasing, and so what you've seen is, in 2009, we laid off a lot of folks at the city. We're starting to come back and hire those folks back. So I think you're going to see an increase in education and an increase in government jobs as well.
I want to speak about government. You are a new member to the Victorville City Council. I don't know what you did to hex yourself to become a member of the City Council, but be that as it may, you were victorious in November. I jest a bit.
Thank you.
How is it? What do you think?
Oh, it's fantastic. Being involved with the city and really making sure people know, if you're not from the high desert, we actually believe in the high desert. We actually love the high desert. We want to protect the quality of life we have there. For example, University Prep High School in Victorville was just voted one of the top 50 schools in California, and we couldn't be more proud. But most people wouldn't know that, so we're really going to highlight that, and you're going to hear more about that school, but fantastic. We actually had to wait overnight in line to get my stepdaughter in that school a number of years ago, and that's how important education is to the folks in the high desert.
What about, for example, Victor Valley Community College and CSUSB, not far?
Right.
How important are those to the high desert community?
Well, education in general, what you're seeing is a lot of great folks, veteran families, older families up in the high desert where their kids are either already going to those schools that you mentioned. Cal State San Bernardino is a fantastic school, Victor Valley College, and then once they matriculate through, they're coming back to the high desert because, especially the millennials, they cannot get employment in the urban core down the hill. And so what we're trying to do is look at, okay, what can we do as a city to take advantage of this talent pool that we have rather than lose them to down the hill.
You'll come back?
Absolutely.
He is Eric Negrete. He is a member of the Victorville City Council. My name is Brad Pomerance. You are watching Charter Local Edition. This is Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are joined today by Mike Souborious. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. And so I'd like to speak with you about the drought. We are in Riverside. It's hot, it's dry. Riverside, though, is in a unique situation. I've been reading about this lately. While the State Water Board has mandated certain conservation targets, anywhere from 8 to 36%,
yes,
there is an exemption that if a community is truly independent of other sources of water, if they are solely self-reliant, they will not be subject to these reductions. Is that accurate?
Yeah, to a degree, and it included surface water. Originally, I believe it included groundwater, but that was written out at the last minute. And if you're water independent and you've got 4 years or more supply and it's surface water, then they're asking for a 4% reduction.
And you, meaning Riverside, met those three requirements.
Yes, except that we get our water out of the ground that comes from the surface water that percolates down through.
So the State Water Board has said you don't gain the benefit of the exception.
That's right. And so we're asking them to look into that and
well, you're asking more than that. You're asking the courts to look into it. And so talk to us about that, because look, I presume that Riverside wants to be part of the greater community of California.
Absolutely.
And support the entire region and state. But at a certain level, this is something that has been negotiated for God since the 1800s.
Yes.
So where do you go with this?
Well, you know, what we're trying to do is show the state, look, we've been water conservation minded for at least 15 years. We've had the rebates for the ultra low flow toilets, the shower heads, you know, the faucets. We've had different programs that try to get everybody to conserve all the way down the line from 15 years back till now. So they're showing on the numbers that we've, you know, hit some of these 20 and 25% goals over the last 15 years. So a lot of other communities have not done that, and Riverside has actually been a model that others have followed.
Yet what's interesting is, for some communities who've been conserving, the conservation started, let's say 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Right.
So they had significant conservation targets met, but the State Water Board set their targets at 2013 levels.
Right.
So many cities were already down,
right,
and yet now they're being forced to go down almost to places that they can't meet.
And think about somebody that is a single person in an apartment, for instance, and you're saying, okay, you cut 20 some odd % by low flow toilets, low flow this, you know, things were mandated with codes that, you know, have taken that choice away actually. And now you're being asked to cut yet again at some point in time, you know, what is there left to cut? And same with the homeowner that has medium yard, small yard, large yard. I mean, you know, you can only go so far, and then it's time to turn it down.
And let's talk about the city of Riverside, which is known for large plots.
Yes.
Now, I do feel as if we're getting to a place where we don't frown at brown.
Right.
And so it's okay if our grasses are not green, but they're brown. But still, I mean, you go to some of these lots in Riverside, they're very large. And so it becomes even more challenging to conserve.
Yes.
So how are your constituents handling this, especially your constituents? Because the plots in your area, some of them at least, are pretty big.
They're very large. And, you know, go to another part of another ward, Ward 5, is the Greenbelt. We mandated 5-acre parcels in these, and we said you've got to maintain them and keep them nice and keep them green, but yet now we're telling them now you got to do it with a whole lot less water. And, you know, it's an interesting dilemma, to say the least.
So how are you managing that dilemma?
You know, right now we're asking people to cut back to 3-day-a-week watering.
And let's talk about that, because recently, I know that you're operating in good faith and you're trying to hit that 24% target, which the State Water Board mandated while the lawsuit is pending. And so with your utility, I guess you recently passed some ordinances, an ordinance, which, like you said, cuts water sprinklers from 4 to 3 days a week?
Yes. And 4 was the temporary restriction during the past year because of the first onset of the drought regulations.
And then for the cooler months, 2 days a week?
Yes.
And so that's October to March.
Well, that actually got changed at the last minute. We ended up making it November 1st, but we're actually going to kind of wait and see, because the argument, actually I made it, was we have Santa Ana winds oftentimes at least the first 2-3 weeks in October, high winds, very dry, like 12% humidity, and sometimes 105-degree temperatures. So if you were fortunate enough to somehow limp your grass somewhat and shrubs and trees through the summer with the 3-day-a-week watering, if we had that condition in October, you're done.
What about the odd even restriction? That's been considered in some jurisdictions where one would look at addresses. And so, depending on how your address ended,
Right, with the day of the week.
Right.
Kind of like the odd even
Yeah.
with the license plates.
I was thinking
back
that
in-
for that. We're old enough to remember the
back
gas
back
stations
in
in the 70s.
about 74 with the
Right.
embargo.
I remember sitting in a car.
Well, we actually that was presented by Riverside Public Utilities, and that was defeated on the last council meeting
Why?
to not have that. I argued that personally that it was too complex. I mean, we're asking people to look at VCRs. You know, you always saw 12 flashing all the time.
Right.
It's tough to reprogram some of the depending on the model
Sure.
the timers, and to do a skip load of 3 times a week. And also, the argument is, besides that, what if it rains on a certain day and your odd even falls in a way that it puts you
Right,
back too many days?
yeah.
You know, if we're trying to get people to conserve, don't put a burden around their neck, but at the same time, let them properly manage so that they can stack the days.
So
the
let me
right way.
ask you, do you have an enforcement mechanism?
Yes, we do.
Talk to me
And
about
what
it.
we've done is we've dedicated a few extra folks to, going out and responding to, some of the different complaints. If they're free, they're going to be able to drive around and, look around. They got to make sure nobody's watering during the day. It's all nighttime watering.
Right.
And then if they are watering at night, are they having sprinkler heads, or is something broken that's running off into the street? There's no runoff.
But, and I don't mean,
And the days of the week.
yeah, I don't mean to be critical, but look, this is Riverside, a city of over 300,000.
317?
Right. Large geographic area.
Yes.
Having a few extra folks, I don't know if that's going to do it.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, sir, I know you're not king for a day, but this is a crisis.
Yes.
And so is it time for Riverside, as an example of a major city in this state, to get firm? Places like Fresno, I mean, I think it was Fresno handed out the most warnings, or most actually citations
Yeah.
of any city in California in April, 347.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot, but is it enough?
Yeah, and we have some pretty stiff penalties. They start out at $100, the next one's $250, the next one's $500. And
But
really
are
a
you
lot
even
of
issuing penalties?
yes,
You are.
Yes.
Riverside has issued
they
penalties.
have issued penalties.
And?
Yeah, and I don't know the number offhand. I
That's
did
okay.
see a report. I
That's
think it
okay.
was in the teens, but that was on the previous, the 4-day-a-week thing. But most of what will happen is people are probably going to call in on neighbors that they see that are abusing things when they're having to,
Right.
cut back, and that's where the calls are going to come in at. But I started looking at the numbers myself. 317,000 people, and you start looking at going out and watching somebody's timing and what days of the week. And
Well,
I
it
mean,
doesn't
even if
have
you
to
had
be.
50 people,
No, I know.
It would be almost impossible.
But look, obviously,
Yeah.
we can't, it's impossible.
Yeah,
It's truly impossible.
it
Unless
really
you had
is.
special meters, which
Right.
I don't think we're there yet in
No.
Riverside. But still, if we don't get rains this winter,
yeah.
this is like apocalyptic almost. And I don't think I'm being
No,
hyperbolic.
it's possible it
this
could pass over.
This is apocalyptic.
Yeah, they're looking that we're at 85. Been watching
yes,
this real
I know,
close. We're
you
at
and me both
85%.
for El Nino.
Yes, and all the indicators are there, and I believe the red crab that came to the surface recently
Oh, I don't
is
know
an
about this one.
indicator.
Tell-
Yeah,
the red-
apparently they come up to the surface and they're floating around everywhere in certain
Is that
places
like the
in the warmer
groundhog?
water. Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so let's hope and pray that we do see an El
Yes.
Nino.
And we had more rain this year than the previous
Yes,
year.
But let's talk about El Nino.
Yeah.
If there is an El Nino that's as significant as we think it could be,
Yeah.
is Riverside able to capture the water that comes on the city?
I don't think they'd be able to. I know that there is talk about putting in some rubber dams up along the Santa Ana River, but again, you've got Prado that has been holding water back
Right.
for years that didn't, and the groundwater has come up significantly since 1969 when they had a basin plan. And we've got Seven Oaks Dam that originally way up against the mountains up in Mentone originally was not designed to hold back water, but to keep floodwaters from coming through. They are now going to start damming up water. So a lot of things have changed, so there's going to be a lot of other things in play. Bottom line is we haven't built any reservoirs other than Diamond Valley in the last 35, 40 years.
And?
our population's doubled in that time.
And so what can
Water
we do?
desalinization. This is the time to really start working on other sources of water to get us through these
But what
potential
about the
humps.
El Nino? It's too soon.
It is.
If it happens.
I think to be able to try to capture, although it will effectively hit the groundwater quite.
Hopefully.
Recharge.
His name is Mike Souborious. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. We're in Riverside today. I'm Brad Pomerance on Charter Local Edition.